Hi everyone, Elite Assassin here, and welcome back to my Tanking Tours series. Today we're moving along with the second story dungeon found in the Reborn campaign, and that is the Tam Tara Deepcroft. Now, this dungeon is probably the one I've done the most. However, as you'll see from this video, that doesn't necessarily mean that it goes the best. Alright, so let's get right to it. Alright guys. Now, this dungeon is pretty straightforward, and I guess I've done this one probably the most of all of them, but you'll see this one really shows that despite the fact that it's probably my most done dungeon, I really kind of went on autopilot a lot, because you'll notice that at least once I have to stop and check the map, even though it's a pretty straight line. There were some areas I'm like, is this the right way? Do I turn here? And I wasn't really quite sure. Another thing I want to point out right here at the beginning, you'll see I have my tank stance on. I know last video, I think it was a few minutes in, I mentioned putting tank stance on, and my one friend decided to point out that in the very first battle I did in that dungeon, I didn't have it on yet. So I made a conscious effort this time to, put on tank stance to make sure I was grabbing aggro from everybody. But as you'll see in this video, that doesn't necessarily go the best for me. And again, this is only my second time ever tanking, so I have much better teammates, or definitely teammates here who I don't think saw that I put in the chat that is my first time tanking this dungeon, or they didn't care. Because you'll notice that there are times where they'll just go ahead without me, and there is a few times where they pull aggro, and that's just me, again, that's just me not being good there. Aggro probably can't blame them for, but they do go on ahead without me a little bit. And even like after the bosses, you have to touch these orbs, and normally like the healer will stay behind, do that, or a DPS will. I did, and they just kind of went ahead and did whatever. But like I said, they were definitely higher level players. They definitely knew what they were doing, and I was just taking it slow as it's my first time tanking this dungeon. Though I do try to get slightly bigger pulls, and later on I definitely get a really big pull, and the healer was awesome and helped me through it and healed me, and I wasn't even close to dying at any point. But all in all, Tam Tara Deepcroft is a very straightforward, very easy dungeon. There really aren't that many bosses. As you'll see, there's anything right here. Right here's where I get lost. So I'm like, wait, there's a treasure chest. Probably don't have to go that way. I picked this guy back up, and then I check my map to see where I'm going. I'm like, wait, no, this is the right way to go. Again, I should know, I've done the dungeon enough, but wasn't 100% sure. As I was saying, boss-wise, this dungeon isn't really that difficult, and really only has two technical kinds of boss encounters. You'll see there are 3 times we're going to be fighting a bunch of cultists, or these little tiny imps around them, and then once you kill the cultist and the imps, it spawns a bigger demon. You kill like 3 groups of those. One of them will have 2 cultists and 4 little imps. That's about the only variety. To do that 3 times, and then you actually have the final boss, who's something a little different. And you'll see right here, see the 2 little gravedigger imp things and the cultist. And that's really all these fights are going to be. And you'll notice my team just absolutely melts. And I mean absolutely just melts these guys. So you could definitely tell why I'd have a hard time keeping aggro on some enemies when I wasn't quite spamming my AoE as much as I probably should have been. Now, as I'm doing tanking tours, I realized my last video, I did kind of just blab on about 14 a bit. But I really didn't talk much about the dungeon we're in. So I figured for this one, I'd at least read the description of the dungeon for you guys, because it gives you some backstory on the dungeon and on the world that you're playing in. Alright, so for the Tam Tara Deepcroft, the thing reads, since its establishment during the Gamorrean times, the subterranean crypt has been used for generations as a final resting place for the remains of rulers and nobles. Since the calamity, however, the tunnels have become overrun with the Lambs of Dalamund, a deadly cult who worships the now fallen satellite as their savior. It is in the Deepcroft that these twisted souls silently plot their revenge against those who fought to prevent the advent of Dalamund, summoning any dark presence who will aid them to this end, no matter what the cost. And it's kind of interesting because if you've played this game, you might have heard of Dalamund, and you might not have, because it had a lot to do with 1.0 and leading up to the beginning of A Realm Reborn. Because 14 was, well, if you know anything about Final Fantasy 14, you probably know it has a very rocky start, and the original game wasn't very good at all. And there's actually a really cool documentary on YouTube about this. And if you have a little while, I think it's a total of 3 parts, maybe about 2 hours long. You know, during the this stay-at-home order, I've had some time to just sit back and watch some YouTube videos. And I actually did watch the documentary, and it gave a really great insight into why the original 14 came out so bad. And it really gave a lot of insight into how the new director, Yoshida, came in, his philosophy, and how he really helped turn this game around. It's very interesting, and basically, to sum it up, in-game, what they decided to do was they had this moon appear, and they had it start to slowly fall on the world, and it eventually ended up with the moon, which was called Dalamund, as mentioned in the description of this dungeon, landed, and out came Bahamut, because the moon was actually like a containment thing for one of the ancient races in the game. He came out, start destroying everything, and the Warriors of Light in 1.0 basically gave their lives to end it, and then cue the beginning of A Realm Reborn. So it was really cool that they ended up taking the original game and its destruction and taking how they fixed the actual game in 2.0 and brought it into the story. So it was really cool. That's why you can't find like classic servers of 14, which from what I saw watching that video, nobody would ever want to play anyway, because that was pretty rough. But it was pretty cool. So that's kind of what this dungeon's description is referencing, because early on in this game, I guess they tried to do as many shout-outs as they could to the original 1.0, and said some of the story beats here do reference it, and in fact the story does in a lot of ways reflect it, because you had to fight the primals in 1.0, and that's what you have to do in this Realm Reborn as well. Oh, it's a funny thing, right there you saw the enemy trying to cleave, and one thing in this dungeon I tried to do better was interrupt attacks that I could. And I interrupted the kick, but I still got out of the way because I wasn't 100% sure if you could stun him out of it. I still have to get a little more confident in that. And you see here, I'm again touching the orb, and I think when I look back, you'll notice that my team has already moved on or starting to pull the next trash mobs. And actually, we are pretty close to, I turn around like, what are they doing? They're tanks over here. But these guys really didn't care. Like I said, they were good enough where they didn't really need me. And these low-level dungeons are really simple anyway. But it really made me be like, okay, I guess they didn't see my beginner thing there, so they're just doing whatever. They're just trying to fly through. I don't blame them, because the only reason they're doing this is because they're leveling, or I don't think there's anything for the event that you get from this dungeon. So they're probably just doing their leveling dungeon just to level up an alt, and they just want to get through this as fast as possible. Now here I went and I pulled probably one of the biggest mobs I've pulled yet. And like I said, the healer lets me get a little low there, but with I think I have 5 things beating on me, that's pretty understandable. And I do have to say, I might have to try to go and just play through some dungeons some more before recording, just so I can get used to it. Because, I don't know, I don't want to seem like I don't know what I'm doing in these dungeons, but I might run like this again, or run Sastasha again before doing Copperbell Mines, just to get a little bit used to my rotation and what I'm going to be doing and the buttons too that I use, because I really did just jump on the tank after not playing 14 for like a week just to run this dungeon. I was like, okay, it's pretty easy rotation, but I did find myself sometimes getting a little lost in what I was doing, maybe paying a little too much attention on trying to keep everything aggro to me, and failing sometimes. So I might have to do that before I jump into the next dungeon, just to get a little more familiarity with my class, because when I did my first dungeon, I had been playing and leveling up, the gladiator to get to the first dungeon, and then I guess I'd take like a week or two off before recording this one, and you could definitely tell. Here I was very surprised to see that my team pulled the guys from the room in there. I guess like I said, I think I mentioned last video, sometimes, the more enemies you kill, if you have a food buff, and if it's your first dungeon, maybe you want to get a little more experience. I'm not sure if these low-level dungeons is such a good idea to get more experience, but I'm no expert on this stuff, so maybe it is. Or maybe they just pulled without realizing it, and like I said, it's no biggie. They are definitely good enough to handle themselves. And we're actually getting pretty close to the end of this dungeon already. It's a pretty fast one. This one's pretty interesting. You enter the boss door, but it's blocked off. And actually, you have to run past here. And here I fail to grab that guy, which is kind of funny. I'm like, whatever, he'll come back. I'll just grab these two and beat on them. But yeah, the door is actually blocked off. You have to run down and kill some more cultists and grab, I believe, a rosary until you open that one. And this next boss door will be the one that has the 4 gravediggers and the 2 cultists who are summoning whatever demon we fight. You see here that guy, I lost aggro him a little bit. Something that I know I'll have to work on. But I don't think it's too big a deal in these early dungeons, but at least I'm noticing it now. So I will be a little more, mindful next time. And this fight was one where I realized just how fast my team was actually melting some of these people. So I'd go to focus on one and then move over to the next, and by the time I did, they were basically dead. I'm not sure exactly what class I have. I think I see a bard over there. I'm assuming a Thermitage is doing those magical spells, but I'm not 100% sure. But all in all, this is, like I said, a very simple, straightforward dungeon, and a very good one for beginners. One thing that you definitely have to make sure you do, though, is touch those orbs. I mentioned before that I was grabbing them. I didn't really explain why. Because there's the 4 orbs total in the dungeon, and if you don't touch them after the boss fight and dispel them, you'll have to go back and grab them. They're the thing you have to do to make sure you can access the final boss area. Now, luckily here, I remember the first time I did this, I was really shocked that we didn't get 2 demons here, because we had 2 pairs of cultists and gravediggers, but we only get 1 demon to fight. So, like I said, you can't really say you have more than 2 different boss fights in this dungeon, and it's not really too much you have to worry about mechanically. This one has a cleave in the front, which this time I didn't feel like stunning him out of, and the final boss has an AoE and some mechanics to deal with, at least for low level mechanics. But I'll get a little more to him once we cross the bridge there. I see my actual other teammate help me grab the orbs. Got a little cutscene. If you hadn't done the dungeon, you would have saw the boss spawning. And unfortunately, I didn't get any good loot this dungeon. I was a little sad about that. I think I got 1 piece of gear I could actually use. Alright, so here we have the final boss. Galver the Dominator. And he's your classic Cthulhu looking guy. Like I said, he's not that hard, and we really do kill him. As you see, we're already a quarter of that way down his health bar. And then this happens. when you see an ad that spawns that's tethered to him, basically it's simple as kill the ad that's tethered to him, otherwise you don't do damage. And eventually he has, I think, 3 waves of this, and every time he does, he'll start spawning more ads to deal with. Which, as a tank, it's your job to pick those up. As you see, I noticed the other ads spawn with them. I try my best to go grab them to keep them off my DPS and healer. Everyone else nukes the guy chained to him. I just group them all together so they can just nuke everything all together. I think that's a really good strategy to do. I think he only gets his AoE off here once. I try to stun him out of it. It doesn't work, so I just get the heck out of dodge. Because I know if you're hit by that, I believe you're stunned. So you don't want to lose aggro on the boss if you can. And here, the third time he does this, he actually has 2 of the imps or gravediggers, whatever, that are tethered to him to kill. And again, I pick up all the rest of the ads, let my DPS deal with the 2 people who are chained to him, and we just absolutely decimate everything else. So normally these fights last a little bit longer, but we had a really, really good team. And that's pretty much it for Tam Tara Deepcroft. It's a pretty straightforward dungeon on our second one, so it makes sense it's so simple. But that'll be about it for this one. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed. Like I said, I'm going to go and practice because this time was admittedly a little bit rough. So I'm going to go run a few dungeons before doing our next episode, which is going to be on the Copperbell Mines. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll talk to you later.